Hey, I'm Ewan, and today we're going to be changing a Michelin Road 6 GT rear tire on the Rabaconda Street Tire Changer. Now, this is a relatively new product, and it's great for people who change their own tires but are sick of fumbling around with tire irons using the conventional method. Makes it a lot easier when swapping out your own tires. And like I said, it's relatively new, and it's especially great for people who are changing tires on the go because it folds down into a compact carrying case to bring with you, whether it's on the trail side or the track side, be able to change tires on the road. Now, there are a couple steps to get this done, first of which is figuring out how to remove the wheel from your motorcycle. And if you've never done that before, we'll link a video for you to walk through it. Additionally, all the tools we'll be using today are Rabaconda tools, most of which are included in the Street Tire Changer kit. However, there are a few additional ones which we'll link for you below. Like I said, this is the Street Tire Changer. There are two additional Rabaconda models, one being the Mini Tire Changer and the other being the Dirt. But for today, we're just focusing on the Street Changer. So, let's get into it. Now, I'm going to be throwing a few terms at you today that you might not be familiar with. So, we're just going to speed through them real quick. Valve core. The valve core is the inner part of the valve stem, and it is removable, and it controls the airflow in and out of the tire. Tire bead. You're going to hear this one a lot. It's the outer edge of the tire that forms an airtight seal with the side of the rim, keeping the air internal. Drop center. This is the innermost canyon of your rim, and it is smaller in diameter than where the bead meets the rim. This is what's going to give you the room to get the bead of the tire up and over the side of the rim. D-beater arm, exactly what it sounds like. It is the arm on the Rabaconda that is designed to compress the bead of the tire off of the rim. Duck head, this is the plastic piece on the Rabaconda located on the ratchet, which is used to physically push and pull the bead of the tire up and over the rim. Ratchet, the mechanism the duck head is attached to, giving you the click-clicks and the spin around the rim. The first step is going to be prepping the components we'll be working with when changing out our tires. First off, the tire that we plan on installing after this one needs to get nice and warm so that it'll cooperate and make our job a lot easier. Now, there's a couple ways of doing this. If you live in a warm area, or it's the summer in the Northeast here, you just put it on the hood of your car on some dark asphalt. The sun will do all the work for you. Now, if you live in a cold area and it's wintertime, you can also take that tire you plan on installing and put a hairdryer inside the tire wall and let it run for about 10 to 15 minutes to get warm. Now, with the wheel you took off your bike, this is a great opportunity to give the wheel a nice wipe down. This is my personal rim. It's never looked clean. It never really will look clean, but it's better than it was. The other thing you're going to do is inspect the edge of the rim to make sure that there are no abrasions or sharp gouges that'll affect the tire changing process and possibly damage some components. So let's get the wheel up on the stand. So now what we want to do is set up our support brackets to the diameter of the wheel we're changing a tire on. These are magnetic support brackets and they can move up and down the Rabaconda. We want this to be centered between the rim and the tire so that whether the tire's on or not, the wheel will be resting on this support bracket. If you have a wheel with something like a really big belt pulley and you need additional height clearance from the Rabaconda, they have these additional support brackets to put the magnet on, and you'll get a little bit of extra height to get the clearance for the pulley. So now we're going to take our valve core tool and remove the core from our valve stem so that all the air can escape the tire. So now we want to take our bead breaker arm and adjust it to the diameter of our wheel so that our shovel is just outside the rim. I'm going to raise this one slightly to get a bit of a better angle. That's about where we want to be. And if your wheel has a TPMS sensor, it's going to be located right about the valve stem. And we don't want to damage it when we go to break our bead. So we're going to rotate our wheel 180 degrees so that our bead breaker arm is well clear of the TPMS sensor. And now we're ready to go break the bead. Now don't be discouraged when trying to break the bead. You might just have to work all the way around the tire until you audibly hear it click open, or you can visually confirm it's broken. It will take a bit of force to do this, so it helps to stabilize the Rabaconda by placing your foot up and over the stand. This will give you the support that you need to make sure you can apply some pressure. Then we're just going to go ahead and flip the tire over and get the second bead broken as well. So now we're ready to install our ratchet and duck head to start removing the first bead of the tire up and off the rim. And we're going to start by putting on our spacer over the spindle to provide a barrier between your wheel bearing and the ratchet and duck head system. Next, taking our ratchet and duck head system, so I'm going to go ahead and slide it on and get it to the diameter of my wheel. If you're having trouble getting it up and over the rim, you can always use the bead breaker arm to create some space for yourself. But this looks about right, so I'll tighten it down. And like we talked about with TPMS sensors before, you can see my valve stem is right about 9 o'clock right now, and we're installing our duck head at 12 o'clock. This will help us later on to prevent damage of the bead of the tire to the TPMS sensor, and I'll explain why when we get there. Now that it's in place, we need to rotate the tire 180 degrees so that the duck head is down at 6 o'clock. With our duck head down at 6 o'clock, I'm going to take my wheel stop, which is included with our kit, and put it onto the stand. This is going to prevent the wheel from spinning when we go to start ratcheting. Now, if you are doing this with a spoked rim, there is an additional process, which is a ratchet strap that comes with your kit, and you would take the strap and put it around a spoke, because if you try to use one of these wheel stoppers on a spoke rim, you risk bending it or snapping it entirely. So now is where the excitement starts. We're going to remove the first bead of the tire and get it up and over the rim. To do that, we're going to take our tire iron and we're going to get it in here, fish out the wall of the tire, and get it right over the duck head of the duckbill here. But seeing as this is a stiff sidewall tire, we need to make sure that the top of the tire is in the drop center. To help us do this, we can use the bead breaker arm, push this down into the drop center, which will then give us the leverage to get this tire iron and get the bead up and over the duckbill. There's an integrated hook on the ratchet that's going to keep the tire iron in place. So we're going to ratchet back to about 9 o'clock. Before I get into ratcheting, I'll explain why we had our TPMS sensor at 9 o'clock earlier. Now that we've rotated the wheel 180 degrees, our TPMS sensor is right about 3 o'clock, which is in a really good spot so that as the tension of the bead builds when we start ratcheting, it's in the least likely area for damage to occur. Now we can take our bead breaker arm, remove it from where it was, and put it into our ratchet where we can start physically ratcheting it down. Keep in mind, my foot is on the stand of the Rabaconda because this will take some force and you're going to have to muscle it a bit. So to stabilize, I can start pushing down and this tire iron will fall out at some point, so get ready to catch it as it does. So now that we've got our first bead fully removed, we're just going to go ahead and repeat the exact same process on the other bead by sticking our tire iron in through the tire to reach around to the other side of the tire on our duck head and repeat the exact same process. You're going to want to lift the tire up so you get some clearance to get it up and over. But once again, in the hook, and you're ready to start ratcheting again.
All right, so what do we do now?
We're going to go grab our new tire. So now we have to go ahead and grease both sides of the tire and our rim. So we're going to go ahead and just start painting. So once we have both sides of our tire, we're going to go ahead and get the rim as well on both sides. So now we're ready to get our hot and ready new tire up onto our rim, now that we've greased both sides of the tire and both sides of the rim. Very, 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 very important to check the rotation of your tire. You can tell the direction of travel on a tire by an embossed logo on the sidewall, which should have an arrow pointing in the direction of travel for the tire. I know which way this wheel rotates because on the outside here is where my shaft drive connects, which is on the left side of the bike, and my brake rotor is on the right. So I know that this wheel rotates this way as well. So I have them facing the right direction now. To get the first bead up and onto the rim, we have our duck head in place after greasing, and we are going to place the first bead diagonally over the top of the duck head. So although I've been able to get some tires first bead on by hand in the past, this one's going to need a little bit of help from the ratchet. So like I said, we have it diagonal, so the duck head is showing, but the back of the duck is behind the tire diagonally. And I'm just going to use this ratchet to scoot this right on. And there's our first bead. So every tire manufacturer has what they deem as the lightest area of the tire, and we're trying to match that up with the heaviest area of the wheel. The heaviest area of the wheel is going to be our valve stem. And for most tires, the lightest portion of the tire will be pointed out by a painted dot. Michelin, in this case, uses a barcode instead of a painted dot. So I have lined up this barcode with our valve stem, so that way once we're done getting this tire mounted, it'll make the balancing process easier since it's already in the right position. From there, we're gonna take our second bead and get it up into position on our duck head. And I was describing the diagonal orientation earlier, which I know might have been hard to see. So it might be easier now on the second bead. We have our duck head outwards facing from the tire, but the back of the duck behind the tire. And this is what's gonna give our duck head the leverage to then rotate the second bead up and over the wheel. So from here, we are just going to take our arm and start ratcheting again. But there's an additional tool which I will install once we start ratcheting, and I'll show you what we're using. So while this isn't necessary with every tire, seeing as this is a bit of a stiffer sidewall, Rabaconda Street Changer kit includes 2 drop center tools. And we're gonna use one of these and put it right around 1 o'clock. And the point of this tool is to keep this side of the tire in the drop center as we start to ratchet the second bead over. So I'm gonna start by ratcheting, and I'm gonna get the tire around just a little bit until the ratchet's a bit past 9-ish o'clock. And then I'm going to put my second drop center tool in, which is going to keep this whole side of the tire in the drop center. And from here, I'm just gonna continue ratcheting until the second bead is on and our tire is mounted. And there we go. Our second bead is mounted and our tire is on our wheel. Now, there are 2 things to be said about this. One, it was a little bit difficult because in the time of doing this, the tire had time to cool off. And also, the bead grease had time to dry up a bit. So I actually did have to apply a little bit extra, and so it just goes to show the heat and the grease are a big factor when getting this physically mounted. And a little trick for getting the drop center tools off is these pulley tabs. We're just gonna release them really quick. And the next step from here is to remove our duck head and then take our valve core and put it back into our valve stem so that we can go ahead and inflate our tire. Now, you likely have one of these air compressors in your house, or you have one of these popular portable air compressors in your car. But what I'm here to tell you is, in this case, these just didn't quite cut it for us. But there's an easy solution here. All you need to do is find a larger, more suitable air compressor that'll have the actual power needed to get the bead set into place and allow your tire to inflate. In this case, I went to my buddy's garage and they had an air compressor there for me to use. With that being said, if you plan on changing your tires at home frequently, or you plan on changing them trackside, I think it would really benefit you to invest in an air compressor. You could even get a smaller sized air compressor that would fit in your truck to bring to the track and be able to use this trackside as intended. Either way, it's a great addition to the garage. Now that our tire's rebeaded and inflated, the only thing left to do is balance our tire. Now, if you've never balanced a tire before, Ari Henning's got a great video from the shop manual on how to install tires. Towards the end of the video, there's a section specifically on how to balance a wheel and tire. So I'll drop a link for that video in the description below. All in all, I think the Rabaconda Street Changer takes a notoriously difficult task and makes it incredibly approachable for the common person to start changing their own tires. I think the first time you go to use this, it could take anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour. With that being said, after you change a few and you've got some practice under your belt, you can change the tire in as quick as 15 minutes. But if you have any further questions, go ahead and click the link to our product description page where you can read what other riders are saying about the Rabaconda Street Tire Changer. Or if you have further questions after that, go ahead and give our customer service team a call. They're all riders just like you, and they'd be happy to help out. Now, I'm Ewan, and I'll see you out there.